Welcome to Theorycraft, a live podcast where game developers and their players engage in conversation. We're back. It's only been 2 weeks. Last time we had John and Kevin on here. This week we got a new WoW expansion that's been announced, so there's a lot to talk about, but let's just catch up for a few. I just saw you two so fucking recently that I don't know that there's like a ton to, but I wanted to say again, Chris, I was really, really impressed. I visited Noto Studios and I got to participate in a little bit of a playtest. And I think that like what you all are doing with NFTs, Noto Coin, and the blockchain is really fucking cool. So I think players are really going to respond to that.
We're on the forefront of technology. Yes, innovating.
Yeah, they don't even know what's coming for them. So how have you two been over the weekend?
Well, I'm certainly happy now to be associated with an NFT startup, so that's great. I'll be seeing myself out.
Yep.
I'm glad I can be of service.
Yeah. Candace, how you been? Congratulations on the promotion, by the way. Why don't you tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, okay. I am now a senior manager at Riot Games, which it's still a designer, even though designer is nowhere in the title. It just means that I do the work of a principal game designer, but I also have some direct reports. And so the mix there is whatever mix makes sense for your project. So I'm not expected to do like a full workload as though a principal game designer, as though I was. I'm given the time that I'm supposed to grow my direct reports and be on top of it. So yeah, you do a lot of like team health stuff. You do some leadership. You do some all the fun promotion stuff.
Are the direct reports all game designers, or is it like a mix of rando developers?
That's right. They're all game designers. So you're a design. Oh, wow. It's like you're a design manager,
right?
But also you do product stuff. So yeah.
So nice. It's like design manager, but it sounds because a design lead. What would a design lead be if such a position existed on your team? I'm not sure that it does. Is that something that has direct reports, but is not as responsible? Like, is a principal designer more just pure content creation? A design lead means sort of like management, or everyone does it a little bit differently?
Yeah, everybody does it a bit differently, but actually what's actually pretty common in games is that the lead is actually a role and not a title, if that makes any sense. So a title is tied to your pay band, and it's tied to like the pay band being like the range of salaries that they can give somebody who has a given title, right? So if you're like an associate, and then I'm not quoting what I know from anyone, but like let's just say it until she's like $1 to $5. Okay, I don't care.
Okay.
And then like a mid level would be like $2 to $7 or 2.5 to 7, like that kind of stuff. But a lead is more of like that's more of a product oriented role. Sometimes the two get conflated where like a lead will have direct reports, but in general, a lead means that you are you're like the vision holder for a small segment of the game. So like I think WoW has a lead encounter designer or a lead quest designer, and they're very focused on the product and everything, but they're also investing in the growth of their team. Whereas many people actually like have a specific manager that is not necessarily a game designer. So it's just hard to say. Yeah, so like a lead, just think of that as someone who cares much about like a small segment or a big segment of a game, and think of a manager as someone who's like going to do your one-on-ones and your yearly reviews and recognize your growth and reward you with performance bonuses and promotions and whatnot, and making sure that you're meeting the competencies to get to the next level and stuff like that.
So that's actually what you're going to be doing then is career growth for people, or?
Yeah, so without getting too much into how Riot does things, in my experience, there have been like design managers, and some managers are focused entirely on the growth of individuals and like the infrastructure of the organization. So things like writing, like someone who's at the very top of a design manager role would do things like say, here are the differences between an associate game designer, a mid-level game designer, and like a senior game designer, and here's how you grow people on all of these axes. So let's say one is like collaboration, and there's these behaviors that you would expect from mid-level versus a senior, for example. And so you would be responsible for like, that's all team growth stuff, right? Like that could be agnostic of the product even, if you think of like a pure manager level person. But in video games, it's really hard to understand if someone's meeting those competencies unless you're part of the craft yourself. So I can understand why a lot of people would like to take an experienced game designer and then give them management skills, give them the tools they need to be, because often like being a creative person is very different than being like a manager. I can be very good at making monsters shoot lasers out of their eyeballs because the tool does what I tell them to do. It's very hard for me to tell someone like be a senior game designer without any experience on how to grow someone. They're a little bit more nuanced than like a tool. So often you'll see some sort of hybridization of someone who is a craft expert so that they can recognize the earmarks of success of their team. And then they can also have the management skills to learn how to really like grow people, coach people, lead people, know the difference between coaching and leading and when to use it. And also, your manager is your front line for interpersonal conflicts, or if you're having something, if you're not happy at the company, then you should probably tell your manager, or else they can't help you. And hopefully you have a good enough relationship with your direct reports that they feel comfortable, coming to you. So there's management in a nutshell.
Management in a nutshell. We could easily just make this episode entirely about you describing these different tracks. We're not gonna, but like I do have actually one more follow-up question. So in your tweet that Chris posted, you're talking about being a game director someday, which we would all love and expect to see, really. But it's interesting to me. I hadn't really considered until you said that. The position of game director, it kind of feels like, how the fuck does somebody just get there? It feels like you're appointed by like a special secret council to be the game director. There's no like linear progression track to something like that, right? So I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, do you feel like, what about the senior management position kind of braces you for becoming a game director more than what you were doing before?
Sure, that's a good question. So I'll say an aside. I know we said we were going to talk about Dragonflight. We're on a little side note right now about game development. It's still game development
It's all
related,
game
so I
development,
still
yeah.
feel like indulging is not too bad. So yeah, I would say that no matter where you are, like, a game director is going to be different. And I know this also because I've interviewed for like many game director positions at this point. And they all have different roles and they can mean different things. And I won't go into specifics about like how the role that I interviewed at for like X company versus Y company is different. But at a high level, the game director's jobs are almost always the same. Um, Sometimes the title's a little bit different, like creative director and game director can sometimes be, I don't want to say conflated, but they can have, like, sometimes a game director is just like business and product oriented, like dealing with relationships between the business partners and marketing and knowing the cinematics and being the glue that ties together the whole product, but less from like the vision of the game or like the specific gameplay. They kind of trust their leaders to do that. But some are very, very game focused. Like, I am the vision holder for the entire game, especially with like a newer game or a smaller indie game. It'll often be like one person's idea, and then they'll go with it. And a good game director will know how to align people around those things and still take the feedback correctly and know how to pivot whenever things aren't serving the team, and they know how to like serve the health of a team. But anyways, at a high level, like pretty much everybody who is product centric and not just biz centric, the game director will make really high level goals for the game, like pillars for the game. Like, we want, I don't know, like, are there any like public pillars for a video game? Like, let's say it's a game like Valheim. Probably some of their pillars were like story light, like tell a story with the environment and don't tell a story with words. That seems like it was one of the values or the pillars of the product. And the other one was like Viking fantasy, which is a pillar of the game that you never want to stray too far away from. And then another pillar would be survival at all costs, something like that. And then they get to define what that means in gameplay, right? So like Viking fantasy is pretty obvious, and so that's a really obvious pillar where you can be like, hey, that's not part of the Viking fantasy. Let's shift it more towards the Viking fantasy. Or survival at all costs. Like, it shouldn't be easy to survive in the wild. You should have to spend some time. You should have to be thinking about your survival. You should be thinking about, do you have food or do you have your consumables? Kind of like a treacherous wasteland. Probably exploration was one of their pillars too. Like, exploration should always be exciting. And the example that I give there is like, exploration is a solved problem in a game. Often the exploration is a solved problem in a multiplayer game where the map is not procedurally generated. So if they really valued exploration, then they would probably do like a procedurally generated map, which they did. So anyways, the game director would come up with like these high level pillars or goals for either like the entire product or even like a given milestone of the product. So let's say like your first milestone was let's make exploration amazing or something, and that you knew that you reached the end of that milestone because exploration felt amazing, right? So that's the first thing the game director would say. It was like, when we're gonna hone in on exploration, and then two, we know that we've achieved success when X, Y, and Z. And then when what you do with your team after that is you say like, okay, I've set these high level goals for the product, or we as a team, like sometimes you'll have multiple directors have set these goals for the product, and then you'll trust your leads or your managers, whatever you want to call them, whoever the next step down, the people that either direct report to you or like dotted line report to you, you would say like, okay, so what do we need to do? Because you might not be a subject matter expertise on a subject matter expert on every part of your game. So that's why you trust these people and you hire these people to uphold the vision of the game. And you say, okay, so if we want the best in class exploration game, what do we need to do that? And then you would work with your leads or your next level down, I guess it sounds shitty to say that, to like come up with tangible ways to do that. That's sort of where I am right now, where my game director will say like, we have this problem and you're a subject matter expert who is going to help us solve this problem. The more the more at bats you get at like solving those problems, and the more you're exposed to that level of thinking and like setting goals and measuring against goals, I think the stronger of a game director you become. So that's the long version of the answer, is like, by working so closely with the game director, I essentially learn what the game director does, and I learn what is and what does and doesn't work whenever we're trying to meet the high level goals of the product.
That all makes sense. Thank you for giving me kind of a checklist by which to evaluate all future game directors I work with against. Now I understand what they're probably supposed to be doing, and
Yes.
I can see how they're measuring up. I want to keep it moving real quick, but this is like an irresistible segue because speaking of different roles and responsibilities, Chris, I know you have been doing a lot of that. How are things going with you lately? What's in your brain?
Good. I mean, yeah, and I also had fun hanging out with you when you were down here, and
It
we
was
chatted
great.
a lot about this, and among other things, trying to fix the world's problems and
Over
everything. but
Hawaiian food. Yeah, yeah.
yes, exactly. But no, I had a good time with that. Yeah, I think I mentioned previously on the podcast, just kind of working on building out the operating system of Notorious. I call it Notorious 2.0. We've been working on at the studio in some fashion, but I'm trying to solidify some things of ways we've been running and culture into something more solidified, just so that when we do ramp up the studio at some point later in the year, that all these things are in place, so that there's no questions about how we do things and everything. Trying to try some new things. I think we all kind of or maybe not everybody, but there's a certain way that a game studio operates, in terms of, having producer for X number of employees, and there's managers, and then you report to this person, and the director does this, and etc. But we do want to like try some new things. And so kind of what Candace was talking about here, is like you have different roles and responsibilities that you distribute among people. We are definitely doing similar things with that, trying to, what if instead of having a producer or manager helping you manage yourself, what if you self manage yourself, right? And kind of, instead of having a bunch of producers, how about you manage your own schedule, that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so, trying some new things. Of course, it's kind of an experiment. Again, we could do like a whole show on kind of some of these concepts, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
We should. Have you linked that book, by the way, to the Discord yet? The Teal Organization one.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
if you're interested, I feel like you should. I don't know if you did yet.
I don't think I have. I'll link it. Let's see. I'll link the PDF. It's like, so no one has to buy it. But yeah, it's called Reinventing Organizations, and it kind of talks about game studios and like, or not game studios, but organizations or companies and the history of them. Like the modern organization of where you have management and this sort of like typical command and control structure really comes from like the Industrial Revolution. So it's really kind of old, and it's kind of like innovated over the years. in the book they kind of talk about the concept of a green organization. And a green organization is just kind of like they're values driven. They have a mission, they have vision, they have usually they want to have consensus and they have stakeholders and like that sort of thing. But we're kind of transitioning out of that phase now. If you think about that kind of organization, it's probably similar to like if you think about Google versus like a factory or something. Like we innovated from the factory to like Google, where people are like, there's more trust and there's a vision and a mission of the company and all these things. And so, anyways, we're transitioning outside of green now to what they call teal, and so there's some other different ways of thinking about the organization. Some way they think about it is, it's less about the hierarchy, more about just different, it's kind of like a living system. Anyways, we could do an episode on this later, but
Yeah, I think we
that's the
should at
book. I
some
linked it
point.
in
But
live chatting, and if you're interested in checking that out, that's kind of like,
yeah,
what I'm thinking about.
it's really cool that you're getting the opportunity to make a full fresh go of thinking about the way things that should be done. Another company that has probably been giving a lot of hard thinking to the way that things should be done is Blizzard Entertainment, soon to be a subsidiary of Microsoft. Yeah, last week they announced their upcoming expansion. We got dragons. Dragons. We're all so excited about dragons, man. Oh, did you see all those dragons? Did you watch the cinematic? Did you watch the round table? Like, what stuck out to you all about? Yeah, how are you feeling about the opening salvo of Dragonflight info?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think my initial. I mean, yeah, not sure if Candace was on the team or knew about the expansion beforehand while she was at Blizzard, but I was doing some preliminary pre-production work on it, which was the talent system revamp was something that I was
Oh,
spearheading in the
really?
beginning. Yeah, and so of course that got handed off to somebody else later down the line, but I'm biased, but I like the idea behind that feature, and I'm curious to see like how it's evolved in development over time. But I think the reception was pretty generally good. I think this expansion has a lot of things that players have been asking for. Some more grounded, return to something more accessible and
Mm-hmm.
Warcrafty. Dragons I think is a perfect thing. If we think about the expansion before MoP, what was that, Kata?
Yep.
There's a lot of concern that, it's like, oh, this doesn't feel like Warcraft. I want to return back to Warcraft or whatever. And so, or sorry, the expansion after MoP. So MoP was just kind of a very self-contained sort of thing. And so I think the expansion is always kind of like ebb and flow between something very accessible to something kind of like different or whatever. And so yeah, I think now is a good reaction to Shadowlands. Just was very abstract and different. I think the goals with Shadowlands was kind of like, let's try to like be something players wouldn't expect, otherworldly, right? Which I think is cool to do. But then, there's going to be like a palate cleanser. It's like I just want to go back to Warcraft. So
Right. Right.
yeah, I think that's what this expansion's about. So yeah, I
Yeah.
thought generally it was good. I thought it was interesting. Obviously the first expansion not announced at a BlizzCon, and so that was notable. I think I think totally doing it online like in that way makes a lot of sense, and something the company's always been talking about, because obviously BlizzCon is such a monumental feat to make happen. And generally to even Nintendo, they do Nintendo Direct, and it's just like on
Yeah, they were kind
YouTube.
of the
And
vanguards there, right?
yeah. So I think it's totally a good model.
Hmm.
But
It's
yeah,
the first expansion after the 20-year jailer arc, so we made it all the way through there, and we can finally begin something new.
yeah,
I have to say, I don't know, at first blush, I was a little underwhelmed by the cinematic. I do like the idea of it returning to somewhere grounded, but something about it felt a little generic to me. Even bringing the dragon aspects into the end, I don't know. This is the first one in a while that I've watched that hasn't really like resonated with me. I mean, we all know how Shadowlands ended up turning out in the end and what everybody's feelings about Sylvanas and such were, but like that Shadowlands announcement cinematic just fucking crushed it. It's probably something to do with the fact that it was like one of the last, maybe it's one of the last ones we'll get to see at a BlizzCon too. But it really landed. And I think this one is like, expectations are tempered, but I think hopeful on my end. Definitely doesn't seem like it wants to reach as much into the unknown. And it's really trying to bring people back, like you said, to things that they want and be more grounded. But well, I don't know. Yeah, it seems like they're really lining up to give people pretty much everything they want. Like if we look at all the back of the box features, we've got the talent tree revamp. We've got a new race class, which for some reason I sort of just like didn't know that they would end up getting back to again. We've got like no borrowed power really to speak of. We've got pretty much everything being account wide. I'm taking a lot of this from the Twitter interview that they did earlier, which is also really significant in terms of like them engaging people. And I kind of just hope like if everybody's getting everything that they want, I hope it turns out that this is actually what everybody wants. We don't really know that all of this is going to play out the way we've hoped it would when over the last couple of years, the community has been crying for these changes,
Yeah, I think I also kind of really didn't, love the cinematic. It was okay. But I kind of thought about it more. I think it's just sort of the cinematics team was kind of boxed in of what they could put in there because, Shadowlands obviously is going to have a bookend story that will lead into this expansion. It's going to connect in some way, but they're not ready to unveil that. And so they can't really touch on that. So it kind of has to be divorced from that. And then also probably when they were doing this cinematic, a lot of the world and stuff really wasn't ideated fully yet. And so they weren't ready to like put a pin on anything yet. And so the cinematics team has to float around and kind of, generally be on tone and fit the expansion, but not be too explicit because things are still being figured out. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to know if the Cinemax like anyone's favorite, unless they're like a hyper dragon fanatic. But I think the big thing for me that was sort of disappointing, or that I wasn't a fan of, which also resonated with fans, I think too, that they also were kind of not happy with, or it's controversial at least, is the Dragonkin or the model for the
Oh,
was
yeah,
it the
yeah. The Drakthir.
Drac there? Yeah, yeah. I wasn't the biggest fan of that model. Yeah, we'll see.
On a scale of like nothing burger to broke the internet, how big is the actual humdrum about the Drakthir model? I wasn't really like going looking for people chatting about it, so I don't know like what the actual depth of that outrage was. Do you think it was a
Yeah,
huge
I mean,
deal?
if you compare it to like say MoP, because obviously in MoP it was very divisive, like the Pandaren. I would say kind of like one to like Pandaren, it was probably like a 5 or 6, maybe a 5, or maybe even lower. I don't think it was that big.
Everything is a
Um,
1 to Pandaren scale now, by the way. That's the
yeah,
only metric
exactly.
I want to use. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I get the sense with that decision, they just kind of wanted to be efficient with the amount of work they did, like min max the amount of work to do that model. And so they kind of were like, well, instead of doing a male and female, how about we just do something different? It's just kind of like something in the middle, or it's androgynous, or it's ambiguous or whatever. And I think that's a cool way to think about saving costs, but then if it doesn't land with players, that's the different story. But I think it's maybe too soon to tell of how it will work out long term. Maybe players will warm up. I mean, I think players will warm up to it over time, and maybe they'll make little tweaks and changes, but I wouldn't expect drastic changes to the model.
Yeah, I'm kind of just absorbing everything here. So, my take is, I knew in broad strokes. I left World of Warcraft right after Battle for Azeroth. The last thing I did for World of Warcraft was the intro, like the Lordaeron scenario and the Burning of Teldrassil events and all that stuff. And I left for Diablo 4. I did briefly come back to World of Warcraft for Shadowlands because they needed, like, COVID hit and they needed all this help, and so I came back to help with like some MA experiences. Please don't hate me. So I knew like whispers of what I knew what 9.0 was, 9.0 being Shadowlands, and now 10.0, the 10th version of the game, which is now Dragonflight. I knew that it would be dragon related, but I didn't know anything. So anything that I talk about today is not breaking any kind of NDA. This is just like a seasoned WoW developer, maybe forecasting some stuff based on what I know about the product. And yeah, so one of the things that immediately struck me, and I'm not quite sure if people have been talking about this because I haven't really been following it, but has it been addressed that the it looks like it's just body of a worgen?
Yeah, the body of a human, female, blood elf, male. I thought I heard them say on the Spaces interview earlier. That,
Oh well, that's for
yeah,
the humanoid
for the
version.
human
For
form.
the
Oh, the
dragonkin,
Drakthir,
for
yeah.
the Drekthar, it kind of looks
Or is it
like
Janai?
Drekthar.
Could either be the
I think
female
it's
Chennai.
not. It's a unique rig. It's a bespoke new rig for sure. But I
Oh,
think
you
the
think
shape
so?
language. Oh, I know for sure actually.
Oh.
But like it does have a similar shape silhouette language to like Worgen. So people kind of assume like, oh, they just reused the Worgen rig, but that's not true. But it does. It is kind of similar in some way. The
Yeah,
female one a
the
little bit.
hand poses and the few emotes they showed us have the same like foot forward and the same hand forward. So I just wasn't sure like but what I wanted to combat that with was often this kind of stuff will just be the first look and of course the game's not going to be done until it's done. So the fastest way to get something and put it in a build often is to just like start with what you have. So I wouldn't poo poo on it so yet until you're able to see it more in motion and stuff. So I kind of wanted to defend it there. I also wanted to push back lightly on something, or
Okay.
rather, when we talked about like one to Pandaren as Pandaren being, it sounds like the epitome of outrage, right? Given the collective response of the expansion announcement. I just one of the things like that struck me was I remember being in the crowd at BlizzCon when we announced Miss Pandaria, and there had been whispers of what it was. Like some people had leaked some of the information, as often that happens. And I remember I was so heartbroken because the energy was just wrong. The energy for every other expansion was, oh my God, we can't wait. But the energy that I was feeling and hearing in the crowd was like, it better not be pandas and Pokemon. It better not fucking be pandas and Pokemon. And like, oh
Yeah.
no. And then when it was announced, you just saw people looking at each other like, fucking really? Or whatever. And it was like, God damn it.
That's brutal.
But what I wanted to, so like one, that was heartbreaking as a developer who had been pouring literally like 9 months of overtime into that, which is, I mean, it's fine. But then two, Miss Pandaria was a great success of expansion, and like what I kind of wanted to acknowledge is that when people will have a first take for like a hot take of what something is, it's very valid. It's great. It's a great data point. It's a great point of feedback. It's especially if you can pivot and if you can change things to really deliver on the expectation of your audience, you should absolutely do it. But I just wanted to make sure that when we say that like one to Pandaria, we're acknowledging that Pandaria was actually a very good expansion by most metrics. I mean,
Oh,
probably
Oh, I
wasn't.
yeah.
agree.
No
Yeah, yeah,
objections here.
yeah.
Everybody fucking says that too. I mean, in terms of like hallmark of class design, I feel like people were always going back there. I think I just meant Chris was talking about people reacting to the
Yeah, the
Dragonkin model,
initial
and I didn't know.
reaction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't know how
not
actually a
so
big
much
deal
the
this was in terms
long
of how
term.
much
Yeah.
discussion it was getting. I
For
agree with
sure.
you. Yeah, I don't think that it has to mean anything for how the expansion is going to do. I mean, our attention spans are so fucking short. Like people might not be complaining about this model in a week. You know.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to kind of underline is like even if you hate the model and you don't like the new race, that what's sad is like that it's sad and it's curious and it's fascinating and it's good at the same time is like that will not indicate the health of the game. A game like World of Warcraft, the indicators are like the health of the game is more determined by like retention, I guess, is one of them, which is meh. But another one of them is just like kind of satisfaction with the core loop of the game. And so the more interesting or compelling or like inviting the core loop of the game is that tests against the pillars of the game, things like we want people to play the game with each other and like love the world and stuff like that. Like I don't know if WoW actually ever had pillars, but
Everything comes back in style too. You know, like, did you know that there are kids born after the year 2000 already playing World of Warcraft and they all love pandas? Like, times change. I feel like the initial response might have been like, keep that out of my Warcraft. But like, at this point, the needle's been pushed so far that it's just like, I feel like eventually people kind of acclimate to a degree. Volpera
yeah.
are in there,
I mean,
Mechanomes
I
are
was
in there.
surprised. I was really genuinely shocked as a dev when players didn't really like Pandaria because, and I think it was just sort of, I played Warcraft 3. I played the Pandaren in that game. I always liked Pandarans and wondered like what their culture was like. Why aren't there more pandas in Warcraft 3? So for me, I geeked out about it. But then I think for a lot of the player base, they didn't really play Warcraft 3, and so they thought it was like Kung Fu Panda, which is a movie I still have not even seen to this day. Yeah, I know it's like a classic and stuff like that, but so I was just kind of surprised about that. But I think in hindsight, after the fact, people look fondly at MoP, and it had great raids, like you said, good, decent class design. Had the best new class ever, the monk, and there was like many pros to that expansion, and I think it was just exceptional. The art is exceptional, the quality of it. So many music is crazy good. I mean, a lot of good things there. So if you can get over like, oh, this is not my Warcraft, it's a tone shift, and I get it, but I think it's fine.
Yeah. So yes, there was the obligatory point of outrage, but I do feel like generally, Blizzard has been out and like really hard making the rounds. They've done so many interviews with different content creators. They're having a fucking chat with Asmongold tomorrow. This feels like new Blizz. Who this? They are really ready to show off the fact that they've been listening to people. And, I think this is the energy that they really need to bring after a really beleaguered last couple of years with Shadowlands and people fucking hating the jailer and the lawsuit. And it's the third year of borrowed power and repeating the formula. And it's like they're here. It seems like they're going to try something new that is old. We've kind of yet to see if they can or really will do that, because what I keep wanting to remember every time I start getting hopeful is like, these are, well, that's actually another interesting question. Are these the same devs that brought us Shadowlands? It's been a couple of years, and there's probably been a lot of changing heads in there. But it still is kind of.
Did you see? I mean, to that topic.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
This is quick, like aside. Did you see the team picture for Team 2?
I'm sorry that you cut out.
Did you see the team picture for Team 2, like the WoW team recently?
I did. I was so happy. They all looked so happy.
I'm really happy for the team, and they do look happy. But I was just taken aback, like, who are so many of them? I didn't know. The team has just totally changed. So to Lucas' point, like, yeah, I do think, obviously, I think there is a lot of new blood in this team, and a lot of people have churned out of the company. But I
wanted
to have people, but
I wanted to loop back. Luca keeps using the word borrowed power, and I just wanted to like define what that means. Borrowed power is a system like artifacts, or a system of like temporary power that you only have during in the context of a game that is like a progression based game. Sometimes they'll have bits of power that you get that you're meant to throw away. So like at the end of Legion, you throw away your artifact, for example. And even though a lot of that got like baked into the game because they were really like good gameplay designs, the problems with borrowed power is that you're not playing like the extreme version of a borrowed power is a roguelike game where every single session you're resetting with your power progression, and then the opposite extreme is a game that always has like infinite progression that never resets, like Diablo 2 or something like that. And so borrowed power systems, he said that there were 3 expansions in a row, and I think you meant garrisons with warlords, right?
No, I meant starting with artifact weapons.
Okay.
I think I probably meant starting with that. That feels to me like the most raw, uncut, high grade borrowed power the game has sort of had. I mean, by the end, when they were super empowered, it was like there was the reason borrowed power started to become a bad word is because I think people got so sick of the come down, which was the leveling experience in BFA when suddenly all your legendaries went dead. Sorry, that was another instance of borrowed power. I felt like Legion was heavy on it. Maybe the garrison. I guess you could argue that, but then in BFA, I meant like Azerite, the Heart, and then in Shadowlands, I guess there are Shadowlands legendaries, Covenant powers that you would have temporarily and then get rid of. Those were the 3 I mentioned, but I suppose, yeah, depending on how you want to slice borrowed power, you all could probably argue that like it's there in some form forever, right? Because you loot items and then the items are suddenly not useful the next expansion, right? Did you borrow them? Holy shit, my cat. Give me a sec. Please start talking.
Yeah. So yeah, the distinction there is like, yes, you will outlevel your gear. It is I wouldn't consider that traditional borrowed power, because borrowed power is like something that you really invested in, like a system that you've invested like core loop game time in, and then it goes away. But yeah, I just wanted to, when you say that the audience was not pleased because there was a lot of borrowed power, and that there seemingly isn't any borrowed power in Dragonflight, which it could be a good or a bad thing depending on what you think. But it also doesn't mean that there isn't borrowed power in the expansion. It just means that they didn't announce anything.
Yeah, on the previous two expansions, they've really wanted to talk about the system right off the bat, right? And they didn't really.
I do think
that
that's a good question to ask: is could a modern expansion have zero borrow power, and will that feel? How will that feel like?
Yeah,
You know,
I know.
like really essentially feeling like classic, where the only progression is gear for raids or things like that. Like, how will that feel? Like,
Hate to like right turn, but I'm so hot to talk about this.
yeah.
Okay.
Can we
Like,
can we talk about the new mountain writing system, please, just for like a minute?
Go
yes,
for it.
yeah. I want to hear it.
What
Okay,
excites you?
so no, Luca, tell me as much as you know that you've read, or like give us the elevator pitch for the new flying.
Are you going to school me afterwards? Okay. Channeling Ian here. Regular flying is just kind of like, it's like swimming through the air. When you have your dragons, you're going to be gaining momentum. You're going to be going down. You're going to feel the wind in your hair. You can turn. You can barrel roll. And you're going to acquire all of these new powers for your dragon personally and learn better ways to navigate the terrain and achieve mastery in the skies over this exciting new world.
Are you reading something?
No, that's just like Ian talking about this.
That was man. I worked with that man for over like a decade. You sounded exactly like him. You even used in the times that he would use. I'm just so impressed right now by that
I've watched
summary.
a lot of Ian content. That being
Uh,
said,
yeah. So I'm looking at this.
Go ahead.
I'm looking at this, and again, this is just me forecasting as a previous like WoW developer. I don't know anything about the system that wasn't released. But does this sound like there's going to be limited flight time?
Like you.
Oh,
shit! They did
interesting.
mention. Yeah, fuck. They said something about that in the spaces where. Oh yeah, Asmongold made the joke about how you're gonna have to like spend mobile gem currency to refill your stamina bar or some shit like that. I'm a little light on the limits of that system. A lot of people are saying Guild Wars 2 mount system, and I haven't played Guild Wars 2 since they added all of those. I don't know if you have, Candace.
No.
Okay.
Um.
Anyways, yeah, go for it.
Who was saying Guild Wars 2? Yeah. So I was just wondering like what they're saying is like all the highlights, like you said, and none of it is like the gameplay specifics. You're like, oh, you're gonna like gain speed. Okay, like I get it. You're gonna like bank, and you're gonna did they say roll or something like that? I can't remember. Where's the fucking press release? I can't remember exactly what they said, but the whole time I'm thinking like, it feels like they've been trying to roll back flying forever.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
One of those things that it's such a convenience. You can't take it away from the players, and you can't like unring that bell. And so they're like, okay, well, first you have to like, their first iteration was, well, if you want to fly in this zone, you have to pay a lot of money. Like, you have to get Northrend flying, and it's only unlockable at max level. And then you'd have to dump like 1,000 gold or 10,000 gold or whatever it was.
By the way.
Oh, sorry, cold weather, Northrend flying, no, whatever, cold weather flying. And then people are like, easy, I'll pay that money, no question. Like, fuck, like, okay, they're still flying. What do we do? And the next time they're like, okay, we're gonna make you earn it by doing some achievement. You're gonna have to like beat the game once before we make it easy for you to fly around. And again, like I've touched on this in previous episodes, but flying is a bigger deal than just like getting on your mount and flying. Flying does things like it undermines the danger of the world because you can just like fly over the monsters, and like traversing is no longer interesting in a way that feels like dangerous. And then so the world actually feels bigger because you can see it from a different angle, but it feels smaller because you're just very effortlessly going from point A to point B. And then the next one, they're like, okay, you're gonna have to do some work. And then people like, okay, wasn't the next one you have to do a bunch of the dungeons? You have to do all the dungeon achievements or some dungeon achievements?
No,
Wasn't that what it was?
Draenor actually did have a Pathfinder, right? And it was like a full complement of like, wasn't it like open all the chests, kill some rares? Didn't you have to do just like a whole gauntlet of stuff to do that?
Wasn't Cataclysm or Mist before that though? I know that was eventually they were like, okay, then you have to like do one of everything, which is all of the systems, not just like prove that you've beaten the game once.
Yeah. Draenor was like peak kitchen sink flying achievement for sure.
And then,
Yeah, so
and
your
then the,
prediction, your sense is they may kind of like redo flying in this expansion to be more of like you said, kind of try to unring that bell and see what it's like.
I think that they've slapped a lot of features onto it that's going to make it interesting and make it a joy to traverse the world again, which is great because that's important. Like just
Totally.
flying from point A to point B wasn't interesting and it makes you bored and whatever. And if they're actually adding some good gameplay to it where there's like a modicum of skill or you care about which way you're flying and you're paying attention to the world and like one it feels good and two it serves the player, then like that's great. Intuiting here is that instead of it just being all of those things, they're also going to say like, well, to make that meaningful, you can only like fly for a limited time. And I'll give you the extremes on both ends. The extreme on one end is like you can fly for as long as you can climb in Breath of the Wild, which is like I don't know in base gear in Breath of the Wild it was what 10, 15 seconds maybe, and then all of a sudden you're gonna like run out of stamina and like maybe you'll like start maybe you won't even hit the ground you'll like start hurtling towards the ground and then there's the fear that you'll like you'll like fall to your death or I guess it would be really weird to let you fall to your death but okay sorry let me start over. I'll just pitch the most extreme version. The extreme restrictive version of this is you can only fly for 15 seconds at a time before you have to land. And then like the other extreme version is like you can fly for a minute before you have to land and if you play well enough, like if you're burning the candle at both ends, maybe you only get to fly for like 45 seconds and then if you push it or 30 seconds and if you push it you can go for a minute. But the reason I think that is because like none of these features make sense in the context of being able to stay in the air all the time because people will just treat the mount the same way they've always treated it. Like or they're going to have to slow it down so much until you reach your max momentum that flying is it's still like long distance flying is still good and still makes a lot of sense but then short distance flying to go from like your quest hub to your quest objective is no longer something you want to do, you know, like it's not a gain of anything except the convenience of not getting hit by enemies. And so I don't know which way they're going to go in like the
Yeah, yeah.
direction, but it feels like this is the first step. And what's cool about this is like let's say they go with the extreme on one end where like you can only fly for 15 seconds, but it's the best 15 seconds of your fucking life. Like who cares, whatever. And then players are like, we don't like this. Then you get to be the good guy and say, all right, guys, we let you fly for a minute now. And like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And so like back to borrowed power, this is this is kind of feeling like an experiment where like, oh man, if this lands, then they finally get to make the world matter and they get to build their world in a way where you can you can guarantee that people can't fly in certain places because it's just too restrictive or too prohibitive and it's all around going to be a good thing I think for the game but I don't think it's going to be very popular.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting theory. We'll see how it goes, and I think, like you said, it's an interesting experiment for sure. So we brought up Dara. Dara, do you have something to ask or add?
Yeah, I might be a little biased here as I
Uh-huh.
worked on it, but I wanted to see your guys' opinion on the zones and which zone, if any, do you think would be the most memorable, or just your overall opinions on all the zones?
Yeah, the zone I liked the most when I saw, I mean, just first kind of blush, I like the snow zone the best, I think. I like the trees in it. It looked a little distinct, and I'm a sucker for snow zones. I mean, I think all the zones looked cool, for sure. I think the fans too. I looked through the feedback; everybody, it was pretty positive. Of course, always think it's going to be some of the legacy of the zone and how it's going to be felt is part of it's like a full package of not just the level design or environment, but also how the quest flow works and stuff like that. Like there's been good zones in the past where I like them first blush where after you quested it, it's just like a nightmare. And it changed my opinion of it. No, I thought they looked good.
The Grizzly Hills, or the zone that's trying to evoke that, I would say probably for me. Although,
The Azure Span.
if that's what that is, then yeah, I'm just kind of like having to re-reference some of these shots real quick. The snow zone does look gorgeous, though. I'm loving like, are those like some nice geothermal steam effects coming off of these hot lakes there?
Yeah, and I think it has the walrus dudes. What's their names?
Oh, the Tuskar. Yep, yep, yep.
Tuskar, yeah. Tuskar are cool, not used enough. I like the fog in the forest zone too. WoW, historically, I thought one of the coolest things about zones was fog.
Uh-huh.
Especially like some of a lot of the zones in classic and vanilla had colored fog, which I thought was a cool like little thing that kind of over time that got phased out, and you have real like I don't know, more realistic looking fog or whatever. And but I'm a fan of fog for sure. I'm not like a fan of like hyper view distance where you can see everything from everywhere. I think fog creates a cool emotion in zones, but
Candace, what do you think? What's your favorite one?
Feel like Waking Shores might take the cake. I love that, like I love that dusky, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like right, like golden hour feel to it. I also think that the height and the verticality is going to make it feel really different. Whereas it looks like it's not like verticality in the sense. What was the Taran zone? The not high mountain. Shit. Yeah, high mountain. That's the one. Where it's a gameplay nightmare because your objective could be like 100 yards above you and you don't know, and you have to take this like twisty, craggy, like rock that is maybe 400 meters away from you or whatever. I think that the Waking Shores zone is gonna feel kind of like it's gonna feel a lot like Ongoro, but a little bit more labyrinthy. Like there's twisting ways for you to go, and there's like and meaningful things for you to explore. But anytime you like take to the skies, you're gonna know exactly where you want to go because there is a lot of verticality, but it's not actually like traversable verticality. I'll put it in live chatting where like see you can get all the visual interest of the verticality of the zone, but really if you were to like fly up, it looks like it's just a big bowl of the zone. Maybe it isn't. Those always feel really good to navigate in, and I love the contrast of colors, and I just love the it's still like a very idyllic place. It reminds me of like a less colorful version of Cameron's Avatar. Just like a lush, beautiful, idyllic place.
God, you were really good at expressing your feedback on these zones. Um, I don't think it's an overstatement to say, though, that like the environment design on WoW retail over the past several expansions pretty much never misses. People would complain about like the maw aesthetically. Probably any zone where you have to do too many dailies in, I think people can sometimes just become a bit annoyed by just because of that. But like looking forward to the new zones is one of the best parts of every single expansion. The first time you go through them is just like you only get that experience once, and it is it's singular. I'm really looking forward to seeing all these in game for the first time. Do you have anything like an anecdote you want to share with us about working on a zone while you're up here?
Not really. I wasn't really prepared for doing any of this.
Okay.
It was just
Just
wanted to
curious.
see the feedback on it. Yeah.
You can go back and make all the changes. Gotcha. More fog is the answer here. Just shove fog everywhere.
And the fog assets are actually really great. Kelly did an amazing job with making them. They're actually really performance. They're just really great for it.
yeah, no, it looks good. I like it.
Like any zone where you can like fly up and then see the thing that you want to get to and know how to get there. It feels a lot like Breath of the Wild, right? Where you like get to high ground and you're like, oh, that's where I want to go, and then you like navigate on foot or you don't navigate on foot. But like the zones that are harder to traverse are the ones that have like the 1/4 of the zone will be really, really, really high up on the z-axis. It'll be like 1,000 yards into the air or whatever. Then they'll also have like some coastal regions, and then they'll also have like a shit ton of caves. And it's like even if you fly up all the way to as high as you can fly in the sky, you wouldn't know how to get somewhere, or the way wouldn't be clear, and you wouldn't be able to see what's on the way. So, anyways, Waking Shore is like my MVP for that.
No, but yeah, thanks for coming up, Dara.
Yep.
So in chat, just because we have 5 minutes or so left, someone wanted to know our hot takes on the Diablo Immortal on PC and Overwatch 2 Twitch PR stunt.
What was the
You
stunt?
guys have any hot takes there? I don't know what the Twitch PR stunt was.
The
Did they do
stunt.
I think they did drops or something. Is that what they did? I don't know.
That hardly seems like a stunt anymore.
Oh, 8-hour window.
Oh, you can only play it for.
Oh, you have to watch for. Oh, so they did like what Tarkov and all these other games do, where you just have to watch it on Twitch and you get some reward.
Yeah, and I think specifically because listeners later won't be able to read the chat, what Red Dawn just said was that there was only an 8-hour window that you could get the Twitch drops, and you needed to watch 4 hours of it. So it was really unforgiving if you wanted to get those Overwatch 2 Twitch drops.
You know what? I was surprised. I saw this story. Was it today that Diablo Immortal reached some? What was it, Luca? They reached some like benchmark of having to get 30 million subscribe pre signups or something like that, which sounded like crazy. That's a huge number.
I have no idea what you're talking about. What is this? Is it like if we
Let
get
me
30
find it.
million subscribers, which is an insane number, they'll unlock something, or is it like a
You get a
stretch
skin.
goal or
Well,
something?
you get a skin if you sign up for. It was a stretch
Oh,
goal
okay,
for
okay, okay,
Diablo
okay.
to get. Uh,
Who
get that
cares? I
number.
mean, the
Let me
people
go
running
find
around
it.
with those skins, it always feels super fucking cringy after a couple weeks to me, anyways. It's just like,
Yeah,
great, you got a
30 million.
participation trophy. Like, I don't.
No, but I mean, it had 30 million pre-signups, which is a huge number.
That is
Like,
ambitious. Yeah, that
I'm
seems.
somewhat skeptical of that,
That
but
is a full
they
stretch
say
goal.
that. That's really interesting. I mean, I didn't know there was that much interest in Diablo Immortal.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
oh,
I'm super
sorry.
interested. I'm like a thousands of hours of Diablo player, and I will also probably play hundreds of hours of D4. I would say probably, but Diablo Immortal feels like it's the Diablo 3 that I love so much, and so I'm really excited about it because I feel like that's it coming on PC is going to make it more accessible to me because I don't shit, my battery is almost dead at the end of the day with my phone anyways. I don't game on my phone as much unless I'm like on a train or something. Like
You have a phone. Is
I
that right?
I do have a phone,
No.
but
Thanks,
Yeah.
well,
Wyatt.
I just don't get a lot of time to like game unless someone tells me that a game is really good on my phone, like Donut County is really good, or like Little Inferno was adorable,
Yeah,
or
like Genshin, I've tried it
Goa.
out on my phone, but that was also on PC.
Oh
So,
hell
but
no, I
whatever.
play Genshin on my
Mhm.
iPad. um,
Yeah.
but so yeah, this is gonna bring Immortal to me, which is really exciting. So, but what's really interesting to me is like, how are they going to time those releases? Because you don't want one to squash the other, do you? Like,
DI
and
Which
you
and
don't want
one? You
D4.
mean PC and mobile, or you mean like Immortal and D4?
Immortal and D4, yeah.
I don't.
Oh,
I don't
I mean,
get
I
the feeling
think
they're
I
gonna have to
think
worry about squashing or stepping on each other's toes. I mean, I feel like it's kind of shocking that DI isn't even out yet. I mean, it is Blizzard
yeah,
time, but they've been working on a mobile game for like 4 years, and they're not even building it themselves. Like it could come out any day now, and I'd be like, cool. Like this is what I expected. Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean. I just feel like mobile titles you generally expect like a little bit faster turnaround because you're usually trying to like catch a trend or something like that. So
Mhm.
and D4, I don't get the impression from anything they've teased that it's going to be very soon, right?
I mean, this is still Blizzard's first real mobile title, right?
Oh shit. I mean,
Yes.
So the
I
bar
mean
is high,
Hearthstone.
and so I mean, Hearthstone was for sure, but I
And
mean,
when I
yeah,
said that Diablo 4 would be a hundreds of hours game for me, and you're like, oh, she worked on that game, sick burn. I didn't mean to like make it stand in contrast. I just meant that my life was very different whenever I played Diablo 3 and I had thousands of hours to spare. So
yeah,
saying that I
yeah,
would dump hundreds of hours into a game is actually quite high praise. Um,
yes, of course,
and so if you want to use anything as the indication of my excitement level for Diablo 4, use that and not the disparity between 100 and 1,000 hours.
yeah. But pretty much for every title at Blizzard or any large AAA company, I mean, it depends, but generally, the target for Immortal is certainly like 1,000-hour game.
And
So,
I know
but we'll
I
see how
sound
it
like I'm
goes.
shilling Blizzard really hard right now, and I guess some of it is my propensity to. I still have so many friends that work there, and what I hate is like every single time some team achieves something amazing, it gets squashed on by some numbnuts who did something fucking shitty to somebody, or like they can't have their day in the sun for more than 15 minutes before like some scandal breaks out, and so like
Yeah.
part of it is like my feeling that the team deserves a fucking W.
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
Overwatch, they
The
announced
company,
Sojourn, and then
yeah,
some
for
shit
sure.
happened, and like you just can't escape it. And what sucks is like they get like a moment of respite, and they're like, oh yeah, I like my job again. I feel good about being a game developer, and I've just finally like gotten rid of all my guilt and my shame of being at this company that's it's done
Yeah.
really awful things. Like to be
Hmm.
honest with
I
you.
mean, we all knew, I mean, eternally at Blizzard, it was communicated, there's going to be some time before we release new games. Like, yeah, there's going to be the WoW expansion and stuff like that, but generally it's going to be a while until we really release D4, Overwatch 2. Immortal and some of the other games. And so we're getting around this time now where Blizzard's turning this corner of it's going to be release after release a bit, right? So Immortal's going to come out D4, Overwatch 2, etc. And so yeah, I think this is kind of could be the redemption period, and see how they go.
I think
Yeah,
so
I mean,
too.
a lot of this was certainly very humbling, right? And especially given some people's take on Shadowlands, like they learned that, man, we really have to listen and care about what our audience wants instead of kind of what we think is best for the health of the game. And I'm shilling it. I'm shilling a little bit hard, but also you have to remember that I like love that company and worked there for almost 15 years. So my opinion is obviously going to be biased, but also please do not misunderstand. I am still heckin' skeptical.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah, and
me
no
too.
one's more cynical and skeptical than the people working on it. So
Yeah.
Whoa.
like I'm
I mean,
skeptical
it's just
that
how game development works. Everyone's
Sure.
self-paranoid.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed. Blizzard has like taken enough hits on the chin over the last few years to realize that like it's not just like they put something out and it lights the world on fire anymore. So I do think they've definitely been humbled. They're showing that they're listening. For better or for worse, a lot of the structure of these teams has been heavily reorganized thanks to probably changes over COVID. Just people moving on because they want different things. They're going to get fucking bought. They've gone through the crucible of all this lawsuit litigation. I think overall, though, like people don't want Blizzard to fail. I think they get frustrated with giving them extra chances when they don't feel like the developers are acting in good faith. But I feel like the Dragonflight announcement has, like I said, it has a confidence to it that makes me feel like, you know what, like go out and get that fucking win. It's kind of a new team. It's a new story. Maybe the cinematic's a little rough around the edges. Maybe we don't know who the big bad is. We don't know how it'll turn out, but like it could be great. And another thing that I wanted to say is that like I wonder if the definition for success under the Microsoft acquisition might even be different for the WoW team too. Like Dragonflight comes out, let's say it has no borrowed power. And so, and maybe it's like refreshingly void of a lot of the kind of time gating stuff, all of like the little elements that like force you to keep playing even though you don't really want to. And maybe it's an expression of the developers having confidence in more of a core game, that it's like when you play this, you'll be satisfied and you can leave if you need to, but we're not going to like employ a bunch of trickery to keep you in there filling up bars, and you can come back, and you'll come back just because you actually like it, not because you feel like, fuck, I don't want to be, 3 Covenant levels behind for my raid next week, right? If they do that, and they're under Microsoft and everything is, on Game Pass or somehow or another, how WoW does gets folded into, the billings that are like sheltered by something else. I mean, I think there's a world in which, Dragonflight does not do Wrath numbers, and perhaps it's much easier to kind of put down, but you can do that without it being seen as like a failure. Eyes might be off like the sub counts, for example. I mean, this is like I'm way out on a limb here. Okay, objection.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Objection. Okay. This is just me being pragmatic. What you said was like maybe with the new Microsoft overlords, like WoW will meaningfully change its game direction and give harken back to a more simple time.
They're starting to do that with Dragonflight is what I'm saying, and it feels like Dragonflight is going to come out around the time that they get folded in. I didn't mean to imply that Microsoft is going to say, hey guys, we here at Microsoft hate borrowed power, change your shit. Like that's not what's happening. I just mean
okay, that's kind of what I wanted to spell, because I was like, what in Microsoft's history leads you to believe that they will even understand the gameplay? Like that they have this amazing track record of like taking games and then making them like
and elevating them. Yeah.
Like
World of
like
Warcraft,
if anything, like Microsoft is buying entire game studios because they want to learn those lessons, right? They want to like absorb all the talent, and they want to like. So, anyways, for anyone,
let's be honest.
I didn't mean to like project on you, but I've heard a lot of people saying like, "Oh, Microsoft will turn things around. Microsoft will make them like meaningfully change the game in all the ways that I want them to change it, because Microsoft is good with money." And it's like those two things don't doesn't make it fucking sense.
I don't think Microsoft will ask them to do anything. But this might sound just like a gigantic cope, but I guess what I'm saying is like, okay, so the narrative on WoW for a while has been like, it's failing. Blizzard is burning. Look at those quarterly financials. They're just going way down, And I think we happen to know that WoW is a proportionately very large chunk of the Blizzard line item on the Activision Blizzard King balance sheet. There's a lot of pressure on WoW to bring home the bacon every single time. And when it doesn't, it's seen as failing. Underneath Microsoft, which can float clearly lots of stuff for a very long time because they've got very deep pockets, I think the combination of like new blood in there, the relative safety of being sheltered under Microsoft, under which they could maybe toy with like different monetization models that make it even easier for people to check it out. I just feel like there's a scenario here in which like they vent the pressure on that team for a while. They're out from underneath the shadow of all these failures, so to speak, and like they get a win. They get a win in whatever that means for them in this new arrangement. But I think that Dragonflight could be the start of that. I hope I'm making myself clear there. I'm not trying to say Microsoft will make the game better. I don't think they have any fucking idea of what to do with WoW. But
Night Stalker in chat just said something so amazing, and I want to make a joke. Someone in chat just said Microsoft Dragonflight Simulator Azeroth Edition with like a trademark, and that for me, like when I read that, I for some reason I thought like, like segue, like marrying the thing that I said to the thing that Night Stalker said. It's like, what if Microsoft thought that Dragonflight was a flight simulator, and they're like, we do flight sims. Let's buy this company.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. That's like extremely reductive to say, but I thought that was
just nerds everywhere in this podcast.
Anyways, I think we all want to have hope. I think ending the show tonight and just wishing the team and company the best, and like you said, I think they're looking for a win, and I think they may get that.
It's a brand new day. By 24 hours from now, Ian and Asmongold will be the best of fucking friends. Like, who?
Yeah, I'm really looking
coming,
forward to that too. By the way, and that's a big thing.
I am optimistic because of all of the negative space. They didn't, like you said, they didn't announce any borrowed power. They didn't They didn't put a villain in your face. They were just like, no, fucking dragons are back and there's something on the horizon, and that's really exciting, and that harkens back to a simpler time. But please also don't mistake me. I will eviscerate the game when it comes out if there's something I don't like.
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is all
because
talk
I'm like too close to it, right? Like I have like 15 years of experience playing it for way longer than that. So, I mean, I'll be tactful, obviously, but there's, like you were saying, there's no harsher critic than someone that's already on the team or maybe has been on the team. And I'm kind of like WoW's ex-girlfriend in that way. So yeah, be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, if you give your entire 20s to World of Warcraft, you deserve to say whatever you want about it.
Okay, this has been Theorycraft, a podcast mostly about games. And we will be back probably 2 weeks from now. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. As always, leave your questions and comments. This is where Chris says the thing.
All right. Good zone, Dara. And let's later, gamers.
No.
Okay. See ya.